Oh, it's absolutely delightful. It just feels like it's hewn from a solid bit of metal. It's a lovely thing to ride.
Do you like Yamaha R1s? We do, and this week on Dream Rides here at the Bike Specialist, we have got probably one of the most special R1s they've done, which was, of course, the 2006 R1 SP. James, you quite like this, don't you?
Very much so. I mean, I'm a big fan of the R1. When it first came out in '97, it was like an evolution in the motorcycle industry.
It was mind-blowing.
There was nothing like it. And obviously, they've done limited editions over the years, but this one, for me, is just awesome. Looks like a cruise missile on standby. Obviously, it's the SP anniversary edition, and SP meaning sport production, and it's assisted for the super stock races. So Olin suspension, aluminium forged Moschini wheels, and it comes
gold.
in gold, of course. Let's not
important.
forget the gold to symbolise wealth when you're riding a motorcycle. And the beautiful Gunsmoke grey matte finish.
It's a stunning finish.
Yeah, it just looks beautiful, and it's stealth looking, very stealth.
Now they weren't a massive seller at the time. You know, it's hard to believe because the R1's always revered as this ultimate sports bike.
That's right.
But it was a little bit slower than the ZX10s of its era, of 2006 I'm talking particularly. But that kind of made it all the more special now because they've gone to that sort of super rare, super exquisite status.
And like I said, they're all numbered, these bikes. So they made 500 for the UK market, 500 for the American market, and they're actually all numbered on the headstock as well.
Which is a nice touch, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
And this particular era, I mean, this isn't technically the last of the Screamer R1s because they did a 4-valve version after this, but this is the last 5-valve per cylinder Screamer R1 until the 4-valve one, before they went to that cross-plane crank thing that they've done ever since. And you know, I love that cross-plane crank bike for its sound, but
yeah, they do sound awesome.
It's not this, because this was really lightweight, really light, and a proper Screamer.
Yeah.
Which is what makes your hair stand on end.
Only 170 kilos in weight dry.
Super lightweight. Super lightweight.
174 brake horsepower, and pinpoint precision handling. I mean, these handle absolutely incredible.
Have you ridden
an SP?
I've not ridden an SP yet.
Oh, I've never been so jealous.
Really?
Yeah, that you've never ridden this. See, because I've ridden one, and if you've never experienced the SP, it's another level. It really is.
It's one of those things you could make a good case for this being the kind of pinnacle of R1-ness.
That's right.
Because all the stuff later, like the R1Ms are just ridiculous, beautiful motorcycle, but when I think of an R1, you start out with the 97 thing that came out with the big pointy tail unit and these angry eyes. Like that to me will always be an R1. And for me, this is that era of R1 defined. It's a proper bling wheels, bling suspension, 5-valve per cylinder, so a 20-valve Screamer. Who cares whether the Ninja was faster or not, or what the racing success was? This is like the pinnacle of that early gen.
I mean, look at it. What's not to love? Beautiful looking machine.
I really don't want to get any stone chips in that matte paint.
Not off as much as I don't want you to. That is for sure.
That stresses me out, but I cannot wait to ride this.
But you will feel a difference. Definitely you'll feel a difference with this bike. So I'm looking forward to seeing you riding it on the road. Let's get this done.
Watch out road, we're coming.
Some of these dream rides feel really special. Some of the bikes I ride are wild, absolute headbangers. Some of them are insanely fast, some of them are old and quirky and interesting. This R1 SP from 2006 feels like it rolled off the production line yesterday. It just feels so tight. The gear shift is beautiful. The engine sounds lovely. Just everything about it feels crisp and taut and like a brand new bike. I mean, this one's done next to no miles, which does help. Just have a feel to them that there's nothing else like it. They're very direct. There's no hiding behind rider aids. There's no ABS, no traction control. The fueling on this one is actually really, really good. Occasionally in first gear you get a bit of a shove if you're a bit clumsy with the throttle, but it just feels like it's hewn from a solid bit of metal. It's a lovely thing to ride. And with 170 horsepower it's plenty quick enough, but it's not aggressive. The ZX10s and such from this era will have that kind of bang, oh god, feel to them. This feels buttery smooth, which at the time meant people thought it wasn't quick enough, but actually now it makes it feel so nice to ride and stops you panicking about the fact that there's no traction control to hide behind, especially on a damp, cold autumn morning like this. You have no qualms about taking this out for a track day and riding it at maybe 9/10 for the whole day. You wouldn't be worrying that, oh, it might drop a valve, or just feels so Japanese in the best way.
The videos we do here at Bike World, they happen because of the support and help and belief from a few companies that get behind us. B-Moto Insurance, a sponsor of the show. The thing they do really well is specialist bike insurance, which is kind of why this bike specialist thing works so well with that partnership. Any one of these specialist bikes in here, you can phone the guys at B-Moto, they'll know what you're talking about, and they'll help you get the best insurance, whether that's for looking after it when it's laid up in the living room on display, or being sent out around track days and used in the manner it should be.
Is there any bike that gives you more of a feeling of just hooligan madness in litre sports bikes than a Yamaha R1? From being a kid in the late 90s, idolising those early R1s, watching my heroes like Shane Byrne, Gary Mason, Rob Frost doing just terribly bad things on the road on them, I always wanted to get my hands on an R1. And of that first batch, of that first kind of cult screaming 4-cylinder ones, this I think is probably the pinnacle. Now the one the year after did have a little bit more power and it was a little bit better, but for me this one was the one. It was the special one with the Öhlins forks, the one with the fancy Marchesini wheels. It was the homologation special. We're not talking full OW01 superbike racing special here, but you know, a fancied up version from Yamaha in limited numbers that just had that little bit of extra spice about it. Only a couple of years after this one, Yamaha switched tact and went for the cross-plane crank uneven firing order R1, which moved them in a different direction, and I don't think that bike ever captured the hearts of people like these early screamers did, and it took them a good few years to refine that into what is now the R1M, an absolutely phenomenal bit of kit. And actually, as I'm recording this, we've recently had news the R1 is done. That's it. Yamaha aren't making R1s for the road in the UK anymore. So with that sort of sad wave goodbye to a legacy, it seemed really appropriate to jump on this and give it a proper thrashing on some British roads. Now, of all these dream rides I've done, there's been a real mix of characters in the bikes. There's been stuff that has genuinely scared me silly because it's that fast. There have been bikes that have been just tricksy, awkward, finicky, sharp and aggressive to ride. There have been weird old things that I had to concentrate about where the gears were or deal with the fact they don't handle or stop or steer or anything in between. And there have been a couple of bikes along the way that have just ridden effortlessly. And the Honda SP1 was one of those bikes, and this R1 is right up there alongside it. This one is a super low mileage example, but honestly it feels like it left the factory yesterday. Everything is taut, crisp, tight, fresh on it, and that engine, that gearbox, the fueling, everything on it just feels kind of perfect. And if you're after a bike that's from that era, before electronics, before rider aids, before traction control and ABS and rider modes and all this stuff, if you're after that kind of more analog experience, but you want something modern enough to use and that's not going to be awkward and finicky, something like this is bang on the money. It just works. I left it ticking over for ages earlier and it got hot, the fan came on, it cooled back down. Now you take that for granted on a modern bike, but on a 20-year-old bike, that's not always a given. And that's where this beautiful old Japanese superbike machinery was so well screwed together. You could happily take this, scream it around a track day, ride it on a 4-day trip to the Alps and back, and then stick it in your garage for 6 months, pull it out and do it all over again the next summer, and barely have to check the tyre pressures. It's that good, and it's a real symbol of an era when Japan were making absolute perfection on wheels. Now the flip side to that is, with this bike you don't get so much of that emotional journey that some really special bikes like the Ducatis I've ridden, the Aprilias, some of those old classics give you. And by that I mean when you go out in the morning and they don't start. They need a bit of effort from you, they need a bit of fiddling, whether that's priming carburetors, whether that's charging the battery that you only took off charge 15 minutes ago, whether that's dealing with a lazy starter motor. With this you just turn it on and it goes.
That, for me, depends on what you're after from an investment bike or from a dream ride. If you're looking for something that just is special, is going up in value, and gives you a lot of excitement, but just works, head right this way. If you're looking for something that needs effort, needs work from you to stay on top form, to stay in shape, and then needs an equal amount of work when you're riding it to kind of keep it on song, to keep it going, this thing's almost too easy. 100 mile an hour happens in a mouse's fart. 200 mile an hour, okay, not possible, but it's got 170 plus horsepower. This thing is properly quick. So if you want to ride something that needs its neck ringing to go anywhere, again, this is too easy. But if you want something that gives you that raising hair on the back of the neck, that proper old school screaming for experience, the last of the 5-valve R1s, absolutely on the money. And out in the sunshine today with that matte paint and gold wheels, everyone that rode past it was doubling their neck back to have a look at it. This thing is an underrated but definitely a very special motorcycle.